Well, good morning. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. Sitting here in Fresno with a bright, warm day, but it does make the fruit sweet, so I guess there's a trade-off, just like most things in life. Um, Contrary to the less popular opinion, it gets hot in the summer. Happens every year. So I don't know that this is global warming because we also got more rain than normal this year because there's this crazy thing called a weather cycle. Setting that aside, I was fortunate enough, and I'm very pleased that I went to go see a movie that I think is inspirational. It's not a perfect movie, but it's based on a true story. It was compelling. It was powerful. It was emotional. It was moral. It was Christian based. That's The Sound of Freedom. I think everybody should see this movie because human trafficking, whether we're talking about adults or kids, it happens in every state, in every country. Some of the estimates I've heard, there is now more slaves, people that are trafficked, than there were ever in the past. There's a larger number. Now, we have a larger population, but it's everywhere. It seems to be kind of a hidden thing. Well, the most powerful line of The Sound of Freedom was, God's children aren't for sale. That's profound. And I think that regardless of your religion, that would apply. Because God is watching out for all of us, regardless of what your religion is, what your skin color is, whether you're male or female, or the however many other forms of gay, because essentially that's what they are. They're just wanting to be called by something special. And we're supposed to bow down before that. And I really only bow down before God. Close second, almost ready to bow, is the divine document of the Constitution. Well, some of the cool things about The Sound of Freedom, it brought light to a very real issue. It only opened in 2,600 theaters. Indiana Jones opened in 4,600 theaters, in other words, 2,000 more, and it beat Indiana Jones the first week. First week, Indiana Jones brought in I think it's 10.7, but a little over 10 million, close to $11 million. And Sound of Freedom brought in 14. I like the fact that a moral movie that, by the way, Disney owned for years and refused to release, when Angel Studios, who bought this film from Disney, tried to get it on Netflix, Netflix said no. They didn't want it. Makes you wonder why. Why is the left, not all the left, but a good portion of the left, CNN talking about, oh, it's a QAnon movie. Oh, this isn't a very big problem. Huh. Well, CNN seems to have a former editor that just got arrested for being a pedophile. I wonder if that has anything to do with it. Or maybe it's just that CNN wouldn't recognize something decent and honest ever again. That they're that corrupt, that they're that far gone. Yet they still have some people listening. Once in a while, I torture myself because I want to hear what one of their guests or one of their hosts has to say. But the mainstream media, and this includes Fox News, is dying, and it should be. Because I don't think they give you the full truth. They give you the piece of the narrative that their bosses tell them they should give. In other words, it's not truly free speech. And notice the remarkable similarities between CNBC, MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News. Remarkable similarities. You don't even hear certain stories discussed hardly at all. Once in a while, one of them will break free. But it's interesting that the mainstream media, a lot of it, has felt the need to suppress this movie. to make light of child trafficking. You know, anybody that's making light of human trafficking, I kind of think they're a soulless monster. How can you be okay with it? And whether it's children or adults, how can you be okay with it? This is just truly disturbing to me. And just to kind of illustrate, and this is picking on CNN because they deserve it, we're going to play a video. This is by Dr. Steve Turley. Now, you'll hear the audio. The audio is useful. It is even better to see it on video because you can see the full list. He only mentions some of the things. So I want to give credit. Find this video on Rumble. Go ahead and play it, Jeremy.
Trump colluded with Russia to steal the 2016 election. Jussie Smollett was the victim of a race crime. Brett Kavanaugh was a rapist. The COVID lab leak was nothing more than a conspiracy theory. Border agents on horseback ran around whipping migrants. The Covenant Catholic school kids were cruel, racist tribalists. Trump built cages for migrant kids. And of course, the piece de resistance. The Hunter Biden laptop was nothing more than Russian disinformation. That network that actually reported all of that as fact, that network is now reporting that the extraordinary new movie, The Sound of Freedom, is nothing more than a bunch of QAnon conspiracy theories. And the beauty of it all? No one's listening to them. Look at this. The Sound of Freedom is projected to have earned over $40 million in its opening week. 40 mil. To make it even sweeter, Sound of Freedom crushed Disney's Indiana Jones at the box office, grossing over $14 million on their opening day, July the 4th. By contrast, Indiana Jones brought in only $11 million on its opening day. Keep in mind, Indiana Jones is at every movie theater in the nation, and it's often showing in several different theaters at the same time. So you can go to a showing pretty much every hour on the hour throughout the day. Again, by contrast.
Let's cut that. So that's Dr. Steve Turley, Turley Talks, describing just how honest CNN is. Interesting that there's so many things they got profoundly wrong. And they parroted those words over and over and over and over with every host. You can see the whole list. Like I said, if you find him online, he is a resource of mine, and I would encourage people because you can learn something about conservatism. You know, the fastest growing crime in the world, and the movie talks a little bit about this, is human trafficking, particularly with kids. It used to be the drug trade. I've now heard multiple sources say they're not so sure it is. They believe that human trafficking has taken over the money that the drug trade brings in. The large reason for that is because when you sell your drug, the addict uses the drug. It's gone. You're done. But if you have a human and you can sell them 10 times a day for years, which is absolutely a tragedy. So I would encourage everybody to go see Sound of Freedom. I would give it a 9 in some ways and a 10 in most ways. Really a powerful movie. It is a tearjerker. It was difficult to look at the oppression of those kids. And they did play on that a little bit. I don't mind that they did that for a movie. They play on our emotions in movies all the time. If it brings light to a real issue, then it matters. Then it's helpful. Then it's useful. The CNN producer I mentioned, who was just convicted in court, was John Griffin. He's an ex-CNN producer, but he was sentenced to sex with a minor, so he's a pedophile. Also interesting that if we look at Epstein, and this is the man that ran the island that Bill Clinton visited a bunch of times. Don't know what Bill Clinton did there. This is the same island that Bill Gates went to a bunch of times. His wife talks about one of the reasons for the divorce was because he kept visiting this island. Now, again, I don't know what Bill Gates did with this island, but if you're going to an island that's known for having underage kids available for sex, it doesn't look good, does it? Many other prominent individuals went to this island. I don't think this is some small thing, and it's really interesting that Epstein magically, supposedly killed himself in jail. We just know that he died while in custody in highly suspicious circumstances. But it's also interesting that Ghislaine Maxwell, who essentially was the person who did all the booking, she was like his travel agent for all of the wannabe pedophiles, or maybe not everybody that went to that island was a pedophile, but again, doesn't look good, don't like your odds. If that's what the island's known for, you would think people would run screaming the other way and then do their best to shut it down. Instead, all kinds of powerful people are doing their best to make sure that Ghislaine Maxwell's little black book, the list of names, the clients, it's not released. How come it's not released? Hmm. Well, I sure hope it gets released, and I sure hope that all that comes to light. This is a darkness over the whole world, not just over the morality of our society, but of the whole world. We should do better. You know, it's interesting that the leftist media, and you can find all kinds of examples of this, talked about how the show called Cuties that essentially made little girls very sexual in nature. How that was the greatest movie or greatest show, and it was groundbreaking, and it was the greatest thing. And now we have Sound of Freedom that is, instead of just exploiting the sexuality of little girls that Netflix did, and frankly, they need to go out of business because they're evil. Um, Now we've got Sound of Freedom that is advocating that we need to stop this, that God's children are not for sale. And that same media, a whole lot of them, are saying, oh, it's just a QAnon conspiracy. Well, really? It's just a QAnon conspiracy. We can just dismiss the honorable, moral, godly, powerful, and essential message that God's children are not for sale. It can just be dismissed. Well, I don't want to live in a world where something that evil can just be dismissed. The battle lines are drawn. And I think you kind of have to take a side. There is a left that believes in free speech, that still believes in morality. But then there's the left that believes in equity or whatever the people from the top tell them is okay, as they pray to whatever secular religion they have. Some of the left, because it's lost its ever loving mind, seems to pray to government and believes that the solution is always more government. And if something didn't work, what we need is more compassion and more government and more of other people's money. Some of the left believes that climate change is the most holy God, and they pray to that. And they believe that we need more government and more control and more money to take care of that problem. Some people believe that transgender is what we should bow before, that it is the most holy, and that if anybody claims that they're somehow different, we must bow before them. Interesting how one of the strong groups of the left, the Muslim community, they've very traditionally voted for Democrats. Don't quite understand why, because it doesn't seem to align with their values, but finally they've had enough with the sexualizing of kids and the transgenderism, and they're having a fit. I don't think they're going to remain Democrats, a whole lot of them, because the Democrat Party is this group of victims. They wouldn't call themselves victims, but they behave like victims and say, well, you can't make it without government. If you can't make it without government, I think you're a victim. They always focus on the negative, but never acknowledge, for instance, the great accomplishment of electing a black president legally twice. I didn't agree with his policy, but that was a real accomplishment. Guess what? He's rich. He's privileged. Yet he's thought of, and I've heard him have speeches where he talks about how he was a victim. Really? Most privileged man in the world. You're a victim? And he's saying he's a victim because the wife because of white supremacy and because our society is inherently racist. Well, from my perspective, being racist has to do with my behavior. If I was racist, I would view those of other skin colors as lesser. I don't. I hope they don't cut this video and make it seem like I'm racist, but if we listen to the whole clip and we're honest, no, I don't believe that anybody's lesser and that the color of somebody's skin is really not very important. Their culture might be, because culture defines us in a lot of ways, but their skin color, big deal. I'm this weird kind of ugly shade of white pink. It is what it is. Not a big deal. So again, battle lines are drawn. Another thing that the left has recently embraced is instead of somebody being a pedophile, and from my perspective, if you act on pedophilia, there should be severe consequences, and then whichever prison you're in, they should let the other prisoners know. And I don't know what would happen from there, but potentially something could happen. The left has decided we need to call those people minor attracted. Well, I think that's just redefining pedophile because it sounds better. Well, if you're still a pedophile, you're still a pedophile. Call it by whatever name. If you put your hands on children, there should be consequences, period. And I don't care if you're somebody from the right, from the left, what your sexual orientation is, what your gender is, what your skin color is. None of those matter. Children should be cherished as a true treasure, but should not be part of somebody's sexual fantasy, period. And there should be absolute, very real consequences. Yet here in California, in commie California, and Newsom has sat over this, so Gavin Newsom, our slick, lying governor, he did a bunch of things that just kind of tell you about the man he is. During COVID, one of the big things, and I want the whole nation to know this, is he made sure that strip clubs stayed open, but you had to shut down your church. Yep, I didn't say that wrong. Strip clubs stayed open, but you had to shut down your church. And he was completely in charge. They gave him emergency executive powers. The legislature basically stepped aside at like whining little cowards, most of them. Can't really blame the right in this case because there's a supermajority in California. So I'm really not blaming Republicans in this case, though there's some real problems with the Republican Party here in California. Nonetheless, if you have no power, it all falls to one party, and that party's on the left. Also, California passed a law that said you can be 10 years older than, I'm going to say, the person that you want to be a pedophile with. You know. So you could be 24 with a 14-year-old. And that's okay in California. We need to take back our government because I don't consider that to be moral in any way. Our school system here in California is all about sexualizing kids. They desperately want you to accept your kids' pronouns. Now, anybody that's, say, 30 and older probably realizes when they were a kid, they were an idiot. I'm included. My hands up. Yep. At times I was an idiot. Thus, should a kid be making a decision on not being gay, because that's one thing, taking hormones, having surgeries, because those decisions are life-changing. And they're life-changing in the sense that you can no longer have kids, and that there are all kinds of health issues that go with those changes if you take drugs to change your sex or have surgeries. There's somebody named Chloe that you should look up. Look up Chloe and transition. This is somebody that transitioned that regrets it. You know, there's also a bill before California's, I think it's before the Senate. It went before the House. It passed the House that said that you can, and this just disturbs me to even discuss, that if you don't acknowledge and accept your kid's transition, a minor that you can't give an aspirin to, the nurse can't give them an aspirin to, but they can take your kids if you don't acknowledge, because they consider it child abuse to not accept that. It's probably going to pass. Newsom has signaled that he's going to sign it. People need to know that. In California, your kid can get an abortion without the parents having any notification, but they can't get an aspirin. I'm sitting in the land of immorality. We need to work on fixing this. We're going to go ahead and take a break. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. Also now on 102.3 FM. And then you can find us on Facebook, Rumble, Truth Social, Twitter, and often on YouTube. So we're a growing station. If you believe in this message, if you have comments, please like, subscribe, comment, whichever is appropriate. Share. Let's go ahead and come back. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. Also now on 102.3 FM. Well, welcome, folks. We're kind of discussing the culture wars. I don't know. I've been stuck on the culture wars lately, but I think the reason why I keep coming back to it is because politics is downstream of culture. That we have to begin to shift the culture away from this insanity. Well, I believe in free speech, but you can't let your kids go, so we can't have school choice. I believe in freedom of choice, but not those choices. I believe in freedom of speech, but you can't say that because, that's hate speech. Well, maybe the left needs to toughen up. I guess when you get participation trophies, when you have a safe space in college, when you have a free speech area, the whole idea that there's a free speech area on a college campus is ridiculous to me, because I think, and from my understanding, and from when I was there, the free speech area should be the entire boundaries of the college. That doesn't mean you get to threaten somebody, but engaging in and speaking about ideas and things that you believe in, that's just free speech. And college has moved away from that. They've embraced this idea that, well, you can do what we say, but you can't do anything else. I don't know. There's a group of people that kind of behave in that way. Authoritarians, socialists, communist, fascist. So what is coming out of academia? I think the Democrats have lost their sanity, and they've embraced left-wing radicalism. Transgenderism had to be part of that radicalism. And I don't know that the people that are just gay, that want to live a normal life just like most people, they're being done a disservice with all this insanity, all this eagerly endorsing the idea that, oh yes, we need to have drag shows where drag queens are absolutely inappropriate with kids. Things like kids running up and giving money to the people in the drag show, and they're dressed provocatively. And they're typically men dressed as creatures. I heard one of the trans activists say they're dressed like superheroes, so what's the big deal? Well, if they're dressed like superheroes, why do they need to show so much skin? Why do they need to dance provocatively? And why do they need little kids to come up and tuck money? And I've seen videos of this. My understanding, this happened at the Fresno Chaffee Zoo. Also had a couple of people that went and told me that about 6 months ago, 8 months ago. Why do little kids need to come up and put money in inappropriate places? Like in your waistline, things like that. So I believe that somebody that's just gay is absolutely being done a disservice, though there is a group standing against it called Gays Against Grooming. Hope at some point I get to interview somebody from that group because, again, there's freedom in this country, but I don't believe there's freedom to ever be a pedophile. And I pray that we never get to that point. But transgenderism isn't the only thing that the left has embraced. They've embraced lawlessness. In California, a motivated thief, I know, kind of seems crazy, but one with a work ethic could run around and let's say they were willing to make 40 stops a day. They could steal $900 worth of stuff every place they stopped. So what is that? 35,000-ish dollars worth of stuff in one day. And there'd be no consequences aside from a little misdemeanor ticket. What kind of society does that create? The Democrats, who are fully in control here in California, they're okay with that. They thought that we should have no bail system. During COVID, they did that. They thought that, oh, well, the risk in jail was too big, so they set criminals free upon the citizens of California. They set prisoners free. They sicked them on us, and they've largely tied the hands of law enforcement because crime isn't crime, because they've done their best to remove the consequences. That's scary. If we approach climate change with just the hysteria that the left wants, what's going to happen to all of the people that are poor? Not so much in this country, but around the world. If we banned them from, say, having a fire to cook their food at night, there are some things that we could do to help fix this problem. Like, number one, clean water. Now, why do I say that? Because if somebody's truly poor and water's an issue, money's an issue, and they're making a couple dollars a day, and food's an issue, you think the people around the world are going to care? They've got kids to feed. They're going to do whatever it is they need to do. But if we could bring up their standard of living, because the climate change issue is essentially going to be either fixed or not fixed, largely in China, India, and Southeast Asia, because they have the population. Well, once people get far enough ahead that they're no longer struggling and almost all they can do is think about the next moment, they start to care about the environment. Well, if we could elevate those people in that way through bringing capitalism to them, because nothing has risen all boats better than capitalism. And I'm not talking about cronyism and a lot of what we see with the unholy alliance between big tech, big government, big pharma, big media, and there's other connections where instead of there actually being competition, big education, none of those people want any competition, so they've cut little sweetheart deals for themselves. That's not capitalism. That's cronyism. Also, the left. So the left's completely okay with that, and frankly, a lot of the right is okay with that particular problem. And so a lot of the right needs to go too. We do need to clean house. The left has embraced the idea that illegal aliens seem to have priority over Americans. In Chicago recently, there's been quite a number of African Americans that are pissed because they have some people that, particularly the elderly, that need help. They've been waiting for help for years. And I'm not talking about young, healthy people. I'm talking about the elderly, the truly disadvantaged, and there are some people that are truly disadvantaged. And those resources are now going to illegal aliens. That's kind of a big deal. So, really, we've reached a point where the left's in control right now, though there's not as many hard left people as the left wing media that wants to amplify their message. There's not as many as people would actually believe. I think it's a thin veneer, and this coalition of the victimhood on the Democratic Party is fracturing. But the establishment, it's right or left, is about protecting the amount of power it has and hopefully, in their eyes, increasing that amount of power. Well, if you're about power rather than about doing the right thing, you're about protecting your position rather than protecting the interest of your constituents. We don't really have a representative republic. We do in a sense, because the Constitution defines our rights, but so many Americans don't really know their rights. So many Americans, when we were told we have 2 weeks to slow the spread, and I think America is a compassionate, generous country, and we went, sure, 2 weeks to slow the spread. But if you lived in any place that had control by the left, they started rubbing their hands. Gavin immediately said, woohoo, this is a chance to redefine and have a more progressive type of capitalism, meaning he was going to move us towards socialism. Man can't be trusted, not a good man. He wants to run for president. He's just too much of a coward to actually step in and do it because he's oily and slimy. And these are all my opinions, and I absolutely stand by Gavin Newsom is not a good man. And if you lived in California, the more you pay attention, the more you go, oh my God. All he is a slick talking Joe Biden. He doesn't have the incompetence issues. He has the moral issues. So he's better about lying. He's better at lying. He's better at talking his way out of something and making it sound sort of like it's good, but it's not. Just look at what he's done. So the left's idea is all of these big isms, socialism, communism, transgenderism, etc. They always want more. They want more power. And the reason they want more power is because there's this existential crisis that we have to run and save it. And so you need to give us more power and more money. Every time you give away your power and your money, what happens to your freedom? There's a direct connection there. We need to start demanding our rights. We need to become knowledgeable about our rights. So you'll often hear me say, hey, learn about the Constitution. Learn about the Bill of Rights. Learn about the Declaration of Independence. Read the Federalist Papers. All of it is at your fingertips. What if you committed to 5 minutes a week? That's not much. 5 minutes a week. Maybe your family sits down and you watch, Hillsdale College Constitution 101. Watch each episode. It's just a few minutes. If you want to put in a little more time, because the videos are a little longer, you could go to the John Birch Society and listen to The Constitutionalist is the Solution. Powerful take on it. There's lots of online resources where you could learn about your rights. If you want to just break it down and go, I want to learn about the First Amendment today. I want to learn about the Second Amendment. I want to learn about the Third Amendment. Don't waste a lot of time on the Third Amendment, because at this point, we're no longer quartering soldiers. I want to learn about my equal protection rights and learn about the Fourth and Fifth Amendment. All of that is readily available, but you have to act. If you sit on your butt, if you took the time to listen to this video, maybe you take the time also to educate yourself. So we're going to go ahead and, because I've been complaining a lot, we're going to play a video that I just find hilarious. Now, it's both a video. I think the audio is hilarious. This is by David Spade. It's about COVID. So we're ready?
I miss COVID.
I know. Dude, you know what I knew? There was trouble when anyone that came to our country didn't have to get a vaccine. And I go, if you're telling me I can't go to work, but everyone coming in doesn't have to get one, I go,
Well, once we found out, when Fauci said,
Okay, I'm sorry, but if you've had 2 boosters and 2 vaccines, you can get and give COVID to another guy who's had 5 vaccines and 4 boosters.
Mhm.
What's the difference between a vaccine and a booster? I don't know. It's just more vaccine, but booster sounds better. Anyway, a guy with 25 vaccines would get and give COVID to another guy with 25 vaccines. That's why I'm introducing the daily COVID shot. Every day you get a shot. By the time you get to your car, you got no immunity. But it's a beautiful 39 seconds.
Let's
I
go ahead and
miss
cut it there.
COVID.
I know. Dude, you know what I knew?
So the reason that's important is because that guy's not a conservative. But now, who would have thought that the culture wars would begin to be fought through comedy? Well, comedy's powerful. And if the left is realizing the ridiculousness, then we have a real shot. That's a moment of hope. They were totally right. How COVID was dealt with, how we were lied to by our government was absolute tyranny. And how many people complied? I often give this analogy. If everybody says in Schindler's List, you would have been Schindler, you would have been the one that stood against the Nazis. Is that really the case? Well, I think we have a big insight because most people wouldn't have been Schindler. That's just not reality. Did you comply? Are you still complying? Or are you demanding your rights and only voting for politicians that will protect your rights and see themselves as servants? That's key. That's absolutely key. Finding good people that'll run. And frankly, local is where this all changes. Are you supporting a local school board member? Somebody you know, your friend, your neighbor. Maybe you're ready to run. Maybe it's your time to act. What about city council? All of these things need to happen to defend our liberty. You know, the Constitution was God given. Our rights were God given. Our founders were brilliant in this. They were not perfect men, but they were brilliant in having that essential idea and saying these truths are self evident, saying that all men are created equal. Now, we failed, but the idea, the ideal, even though we failed that ideal initially, because if you weren't white, you weren't actually created equal. But we were willing to shed our own blood during the Civil War to move towards that. The North and the Christians in the North, because this was largely founded as a Christian country, they realized early on, before we were a country, before we had declared independence, that slavery was evil, because there is a Bible passage about that. And when somebody showed up with a ship full of slaves, they arrested them, not the slaves. They freed the slaves, and they arrested the people that were trafficking. Human trafficking, getting right back to that idea of human trafficking. They arrested them and then eventually hung them after a trial. Pretty interesting that, if we're going to go all the way back, there were also moments where we did the right thing. Every single country has blood on its hands, isn't perfect, is full of faults. Wish it wasn't the case. It's the case. I want to point out that there's a lot of high profile leftists, particularly out of Hollywood, that every time a conservative is elected, particularly to president, they talk about how they're going to leave, how this is a horrible country, how fascism has taken over, and then they don't leave. I wish they'd leave, because all they want to do is tear down this country. They're free to leave. They've got lots of money. They can move anywhere they want, someplace with more freedom, with more opportunity. Oh, wait, there isn't a place with more freedom or more opportunity than the one I'm sitting right now, even in the commie state of California. We still have more freedom, more opportunity. We're going to go ahead and take a break. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. I've been sitting in this chair doing videos for about 2 years now, and I want to say thank you to everybody that bothered to listen. Even thank you to the people that had some criticisms, because sometimes they were real and legitimate criticisms, and I needed to be better because, while I'm darn close to perfect, I don't seem to be quite there. And every time I hang out with friends, they seem to remind me of that fact. Quite all right. My ego's big enough to handle it. Let's go ahead and come back. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, also on 102.3 FM, the best talk in town. We've kind of moved to a state where it looks like it's hopeless to a lot of people. If you only listen to CNN, we're a horrible country, founded on white supremacy. Anybody that's a minority can't make it. If you listen to the hard left, notice there's this connection between CNN, MSNBC, and the hard left. You're a victim. The only group that is not actually a victim would be a white heterosexual male. Notice I didn't say cis, because the history of that word is evil, and do not allow anybody to call you cis, because it essentially is a pedophile word, and people don't realize that. And it was invented by a German doctor. It's essentially a pedophile word. Don't let anybody ever refer to you as cis. Well, unless you want to be a pedophile, in which case, if you act, you should go to jail, and there should be severe repercussions. I truly believe that there is hope, though, or I wouldn't be doing this. Hope because there is a God, and God is good, and if you change yourself, if you accept God's word, there's a strength that comes with that. Because I truly believe that miracles are possible, and that the world can be changed. But it's not that it's God alone. We have this set of rules called the Bible that have all these stories to inspire you, to teach you. And those set of stories set a path for you. They guide you to act. If something's wrong, you're supposed to speak up. You might still love the person, but you should not tolerate the sin. You might see something that's wrong and go, well, okay, this is not necessarily the best thing for the person. Maybe you should talk to that person, whether it's friends, family, neighbors. There's the first step. Can you go out and take the word of God and act? Can you make that word reflective in your actions? We can't just sit on the sidelines. We have to get involved. I'm not just on the radio. I lead a group called Constitutionalists for California that I believe in. Well, at least I lead the Clovis chapter. There's also a Kingsburg chapter, and shout out to all my friends in Kingsburg, friends and allies. I'm on the Republican Central Committee. Are they a flawed committee? Yeah. Can they do better? Sure hope so. But that's one of the ways that we can move towards action. I've walked for candidates on a regular basis. I've called for candidates, meaning making phone calls, advocating for a particular candidate. My group has candidate forums. We have candidates come before us and speak and ask them questions about the Constitution and their perspective, to make sure that we have vetted and picked the right people. You know, often people don't wake up until we're through the primary. Well, that's too late. If somebody makes it through the primary that is not a good candidate, then you're back to hold your nose and pick the best of two evils. What if instead, and there are good people, starting at the local level, you got to know the candidate early? In the primary, you helped somebody that you could believe in, that you thought was an honorable person. Wouldn't that shift things? we have created this situation that has resulted in the left's insanity. Conservatism we maintain systems, we clean up the mess. Think of it as the left just wants to have a big giant party with no consequences. And they constantly want a bigger party, and they're whining about how they're victims, rather than going, wow, there's freedom and opportunity. First generation Americans, meaning they immigrated from somewhere else, they're almost always, I'm sure there's an exception, but almost always, the most patriotic. They breathe in freedom when they arrive, and when they exhale, they're exhaling patriotism. And the reason is because they realize this is the best opportunity anywhere in the world for success. Not everybody can be president. Everybody, if you do things the right way, meaning you find a stable relationship, you marry that person, you stay together, you save money, you're a little bit conservative with how you approach it instead of taking big risks, you can have a great life. Doesn't mean you shouldn't take risks at times. For instance, I'm self-employed, sole proprietorship. I took a big leap because I believed in myself, and I believed in my ability to access the amazing possibilities here in the United States. The combination of freedom, which gives you all of these choices, it opens paths in front of you. And at the same time, capitalism, which allows you to express your freedoms with every choice, every economic choice you make, is boundless. The left would say that capitalism is based on being selfish. Is it selfish to want better for you and your family with your choices? You go shopping at the market. Let's say there's 3 brands of milk. My market usually only has 2, but maybe you're more blessed than I am. There's 3 choices. You buy the cheap one, you buy the best quality one, you buy the highest price one. Can you find the combo that's right for you? Just encapsulated in that choice, you're exercising just a little bit of your freedom. Was that selfish to pick the right choice for you? Maybe there's some reason you need low fat. Maybe there's some reason you need unpasteurized, which in this state you can't do, but in some places you can. What if there's endless possibilities? Doesn't matter what the what if is, it matters that you have the right to go make those choices. We're going to go ahead and play a video. This one is World on Fire by Dolly Parton. So I think that's powerful. Yes, when did we lose In God We Trust? This is a little promo for next week's show. I'm going to be highlighting the Great American Freedom Revival featuring Brandon Tatum, Tim Barton. It's going to happen in Clovis, California, August 5th. So I hope you tune in next week and hear that message of freedom, because I think it gives us a path forward. It combines both the Constitution and God. Folks, get involved, make a difference. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town.